So PY from the podcast fleetingly mentioned Belgian Congo, and boy did I fall down that rabbit hole. Essentially, this democratically elected leader of the independent Congo, Patrice Lumumba, was assassinated in 1961. Typically, the Belgians have copped the blame for his assassination, but as we're about to see today, the idea of removing Lumumba, again a democratically elected leader, was something that the US had well and truly set their sights on. Not only that, but their intervention contributed to a crisis that still impacts Africa to this very day. Now, I'm going to avoid focusing on Lumumba's domestic policy because I don't want the video to blow out. As admirable as Lumumba's leadership may have been, this video isn't actually about him, but instead about the machinations of power at play. And so, if you didn't catch it from last time, there's very much a theme to these new videos. And we're going to call the series The Shadow Empire as we look at the covert empire that America has historically run. So if you don't know anything about the Congo, it was something of a private colony owned by King Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold ran it ruthlessly, a topic for another video, again extremely interesting. And so Belgium stepped in to claim it for themselves. Might I add, it's a very Belgian thing to randomly pop up among the big powers. They popped up in colonial Africa, suddenly got really good at making chocolate, and then for a decade, randomly had an incredible football team. During the wave of post-World War II colonisation, the Democratic Republic of Congo gained its independence in 1960. Just as a side note, the Republic of Congo next door gained its independence from France rather than Belgium, and so that's that difference. In its first election, Lumumba's Congolese national movement, otherwise known as the MNC, won a majority in parliament. Now, the MNC was the nationalist party and, by creed, allowed for flexibility of ideology as long as its members were committed to a united Congolese nation led by the Congolese. And so on their inaugural Independence Day, Lumumba gave a speech denouncing the impact of colonialism on the Congo and wasn't shy in reaching out to socialist nations. For this, a lot of people make the argument that Lumumba was killed because he was a communist and in the Cold War era. But just like with the Idi Amin episode, I always think resources provide a better answer than ideology in the big game of geopolitics. You see, this region here, Katanga, was the jewel of the Congo. Kind of what WA is to Australia or Texas is to America. Now, Katanga was home to the Congo's copper, cobalt and gold reserves, and Belgium had largely plundered the region, with Belgian mining companies having huge skin in the game. For Lumumba's Congo to have an economically viable future, it needed control of this rich reserve. However, a guy called Moise Tshombe, a bitter enemy of Lumumba, was really close with the Western mining elite, and the CIA might I add, and he led a secessionist movement. Now, one would think that the West would support Lumumba because he was a democratically elected leader and the Cold War was framed as a fight between freedom and tyranny. However, they backed Tshombe. For the Belgians, having someone who would play ball with their mining companies and wouldn't have millions in tax going northwest to Leopoldville was essential, and so they sent forces in to support Moise Tshombe. Now, this is all happening in the year 1960. President Eisenhower's last year in office, and so Ike supported Belgium. Now, for Belgium, their obvious incentive were the mining riches that were at stake. But for America, wealth wasn't actually on the line here. So why did they care about the Congo so much, if not for ideology then? Well, Katanga was rich in one really important strategic resource: uranium. In fact, Belgian mining companies in the Congo provided America with much of the uranium used in the Manhattan Project, as in the 2 atomic bombs dropped on Japan. At this point in history, restricting all other nations' access to nukes was considered essential for maintaining their dominant status. At the same time, many prominent officials in Ike's administration had financial ties to the Katanga wealth. Looking on from the sidelines, the Soviet Union was obviously furious with this, and they led the UN Security Council in the withdrawal of Belgian troops, who were to be replaced by United Nations troops. What's surprising is that America actually went for this because the UN Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld, was closely allied with Washington. The UN troops made no effort to end the secession, and this would set the stage for the most brutal of assassinations. So one of the biggest barriers to learning about another nation's history is keeping track of unfamiliar names. So I'll make it as basic as possible. So we have Lumumba, the Prime Minister of Congo, and Tshombe, the leader of the rebellion. I'm now going to add a third guy. His name is Joseph Kasavubu, and he was the president, a figurehead for the nation, and one with the power to sack the Prime Minister. So Lumumba was incredibly popular in the Congo. The reason that we know this is that the Church Committee, an internal 1975 investigation into the activity of the CIA, conceded as much. But in the midst of civil war breaking out, Kasavubu went ahead and fired Lumumba as Prime Minister. What was particularly revealing was that Hammarskjöld actually publicly endorsed this decision before the UN Security Council, and then closed off radio stations to prevent Lumumba from broadcasting his case. Lumumba then appeared before the Congolese Congress and had both houses reaffirm him as Prime Minister. So it was pretty clear cut that it was only the outside powers who wanted him gone, and the Congo had very clearly made their case before the UN that Lumumba was their guy. Well, I'm now going to introduce our fourth guy, and he might be someone you've heard before. His name was Joseph Mobutu. Get ready for the leadership merry-go-round. So as Lumumba was being reaffirmed as Prime Minister, Mobutu steamrolled into Leopoldville and declared himself as the new leader, having neutralised both Lumumba and the President Kasavubu. It's worth adding that the US supported this coup. Interestingly, the Eisenhower regime had previously plotted the assassination of Lumumba by placing a virus on his toothbrush that was fatal to the indigenous Congolese, but they weren't able to find a way to keep the virus on the brush for long enough. With Mobutu now in, Lumumba went on the run and was aided by the United Nations, who were now seeking to put distance between themselves and America, who were clearly acting nefariously. In fact, the CIA helped Mobutu find Lumumba by closing off roads and alerting him to potential escape routes. On December 1st, 1960, Lumumba became separated from his wife and son, and against the advice of his inner circle, took a ferry back to get them before they were captured. This led him straight to Mobutu's men, who then captured him. In January of 1961, Mobutu transferred him to Tshombe, remember the bitter enemy of Lumumba who was supported by the Belgians. Belgium turned a blind eye to Tshombe's men brutally murdering Lumumba and then trying to dissolve his corpse with sulfuric acid. No announcement of his death was made for weeks, and Tshombe's press release initially said he'd escaped from prison before announcing his death. But the crisis in the Congo was far from over. By the way, we're on Twitter now. Head on over and give us a follow and check out our Patreon. For just $1.50, you can choose an imposter for a video, see the face behind the giraffe, and get exclusive access to our Patreon-only podcast that comes out weekly. But now without an enemy to unite behind in Lumumba, and in having an even closer ally in Mobutu than the Belgian-backed Tshombe, America actively worked to prevent Tshombe's secession from Mobutu's Congo. However, their policy was contradictory and seemed to be working towards prolonging war in the region. For instance, C-130s were transporting Congolese soldiers and supplies to use against Tshombe's rebels, while also providing transport aircraft and a mercenary force to Tshombe. Now, I'm going to add a fifth person from the Congo. His name was Antoine Gizenga, and he popped up as a legitimate successor to Lumumba. Kind of like Kylo Ren to Darth Vader, and he ran an alternate government from over here in Stanleyville. So just so we're on the same page, we had Mobutu's government here in Leopoldville, Tshombe's government down in Katanga, and now Gizenga's government over here in Stanleyville. Now, I know you feel how I felt when Anthony Doe got long division on his first go in year 4. Full disclosure, I still can't actually do it, but hang in there. You're doing good. Like the video if you can do long division. Actually, no, that's a terrible idea. Most of my subscribers are Australian. Also, our subscriber question for today is this: which of these three would you have fought for in the Civil War? So the Soviet Union took Gizenga's side of things, and they used Saddam to supply him with arms and money, while the US tried to isolate him from other support. In January of 1962, the US-backed United Nations forces ousted Gizenga from Stanleyville, and a year later forced Tshombe to end his Katangan rebellion. Yet, in another twist, Tshombe then came back to be the leader of all the Congo, and then with the help of the CIA, bombed the remaining rebels. The CIA also helped assemble a mercenary force made of Cuban, American, and South African forces. China actually protested to the US about them using American pilots in the Congo. America first denied this before saying that this was under contract with the Congolese government. Che Guevara himself actually went to join the rebel forces, but left in disgust at the fact that there was no revolutionary zeal. This chapter of the story would actually end with Mobutu returning to power in 1965 to eventually run the US-backed regime Zaire in 1971, the implications of which still affect the Congo today. So much for the US not running an empire, right? If you want to see how America propped up a known drug lord in Panama and then turned his back on him, check out this video here.